There are still 8 teams battling it out for the title, but the other 22 teams are already at home preparing for the upcoming offseason. Players obviously have enough incentive to perform to the best of their abilities already with the amount of pressure put on them by their teammates, coaching staff, and fans, but when they are playing in the last year of their contract, that pressure rises even more because they know that their next payday is going to be heavily based on what they do that season. Some players rise to the occasion and get motivated with that chip on their shoulder, while others unfortunately go the opposite direction, and this brings us to the topic of today's video. Today, we'll be discussing 5 upcoming free agents this offseason that fumbled the bag this year, as they at one point were poised for big-time paydays respectively, but after the way that they performed this year, definitely cost themselves some dough. Before we start though, I want to thank Manta Sleep for sponsoring today's video. Manta Sleep is here to provide you with the world's best sleep masks and functional sleep accessories, but they are also so much more than that. They're leading the way in the pro-nap movement, and everything they do is fueled by their drive to enable better lives through better sleep and regular naps. The truth is that your body was wired to nap, and for good reason. Naps give you energy, focus, strength, and clarity that you don't get when you grind through the afternoon. They give what you call a second morning. Manta Sleep has products for all kinds of sleep too, such as the sleep mask for a deeper sleep, the cool mask for a more soothing sleep, the steam mask that uses steam to alleviate stress and dry your eyes during sleep, a mask with Bluetooth headphones built in so you can play some relaxing sounds to fall asleep to, and so many more helpful sleep masks for you to check out. If you're ready to join the pro-nap movement, then go down to the link in the description of this video, and when you use code HOOPS at checkout, you get 10% off of your order. Once again, thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The first free agent we'll be discussing today that fumbled the bag hard this season is Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks opened a lot of people's eyes this season and was probably discussed more by the mainstream media than he has ever been in his career, but almost none of it was for good reasons. Prior to this season, Brooks was actually a valuable member of the Grizzlies starting lineup, and dare I say he was underrated. He admittedly was never a very efficient shooter, as he shot below league average each of the last few seasons, but he's always been one of the better perimeter defenders in the game who doesn't back down from a challenge and takes on matchups with anybody. He was also the Grizzlies' second leading scorer last season, scoring more points than guys like Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. If he was a free agent last offseason, I'm not saying he would have received a max contract offer or anything close to it, but he definitely would have been pushing for close to a $100 million contract, and now, a year later, his reputation couldn't be any lower. The Grizzlies are reportedly not bringing him back, quote, under any circumstances. Teams don't believe he's worth the antics that he does out on the floor, and he's coming off of his worst scoring season since 2019, so all of that will make the market for his services much bleaker. The next free agent we'll be discussing that fumbled the bag this year is Fred VanVleet. VanVleet has a player option for next year, but from what I'm seeing, he is likely to opt out of it to enter free agency. VanVleet was an all-star last season, and, as will be a recurring theme in this video, had he hit the free agent market after last season, he easily would have gotten a max contract, with a plethora of suitors inquiring about him. Fred is an NBA champion, he's a tremendous leader and floor general, and he's had so many big moments for the Raptors franchise that he's an easy fan favorite. Fred's fall-off began in the postseason last year though, where he had an incredibly poor showing in the first round against the 76ers, and that slip continued into this season, where he saw a decline in his production almost across the board. He did average a career-high 7 assists per game this year, admittedly. However, he scored just 19 points a night, shooting the ball a very poor 39% from the field and 34% from 3. He's very good operating the pick and roll, but his shot selection can be very questionable, and his perimeter defense that that used to be incredibly stout actually became a bit of a liability this season. He's already undersized as is, so his pesky defense was what was making up for it, but if that defensive impact is no longer there, then it becomes a lot more difficult for teams to confidently offer him a big contract. The next free agent that cost himself a bit of cash this season is Christian Wood. Christian Wood was a diamond-in-the-rough discovery just a few short years ago, as he went from a G League journeyman to a genuinely productive NBA player because of his versatility on the offensive end. The last contract that he signed was a 3-year deal worth $41 million, and based on the trajectory that he was on at the time, there were talks that he could rise to the point where he was getting $100 million deals thrown his way. But in each of the last 2 seasons, Wood has been trending in the wrong direction, and this year with the Mavericks was the exact opposite of what someone in his position would want. Wood did give the Mavericks a nice boost off of the bench offensively with his ability to space the floor out to the 3-point line and his work in the pick and roll game, but there was a reason that he was coming off of the bench in the first place, which was because his defense is a bit of a disaster. The Mavericks team defense as a whole was a disaster this year, and Wood definitely contributed to it. They missed the playoffs to cap off a disaster season, and the Mavericks are reportedly not interested in bringing him back, so all of the positive momentum that he built up in his career came to a screeching halt, unfortunately, right as his time to be paid arrived. The next free agent that fumbled the bag that we'll be discussing today is Will Barton. Will Barton is probably not a name you've heard in a little while, and the reason is, well, he hasn't really done much this season. Barton's stint in Denver was pretty positive, all things considered. He was a volume scorer by nature who I won't say was the most efficient overall, but he was an above-average shooter from 3 with the capability of creating his own shot off the dribble, and occasionally he was good to heat up for some big-time performances. He was traded away last offseason to the Washington Wizards. The Wizards then bought out of his contract midway through the year. He signed with the Raptors, but in both of those spots, he could not get going at all. He averaged just 8 points per game with the Wizards, shooting the ball terribly. He averaged just 5 points with the Raptors, shooting it even worse, and all of that, combined with his incredibly lackluster defense, now makes it incredibly difficult for him to attract a contract offer of anything more than the minimum. And finally, the last free agent we'll be discussing today that fumbled the bag this year is Harrison Barnes. Barnes overall was a solid piece in the Kings' starting lineup this year as they broke through and ended their playoff drought, but when the playoffs rolled around, Barnes shrunk when his team needed the most from him, and of course it happened at the worst time. The series against the Golden State Warriors went 7 games in the first round, and as the series went on, Barnes began to be more and more phased out of the rotation. He didn't shoot the ball well at all, he missed a potentially game-winning shot in Game 4 that was wide open, he wasn't great defensively, and the team performed so much better without him on the court. He's been vocal about wanting to return to Sacramento, but I'm not so sure that they're going to be in any rush to bring him back, and with him being on the wrong side of 30 age-wise, his days of being a sought-after free agent may be in the past. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what kind of market you think that these players will be having in free agency. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.